welcome back to the Calm and Connected podcast. I'm your host, Janine Halloran, and on today's podcast, I get a chance to interview Marcelle Waldman. She is an educator, a parent, and founder of FeelLinks, which is a hands-on resource for kids that has plush emotion dolls and a journal, and they're super cute. So if you're watching on video, you get a chance to see those. We had such a great conversation about how we can support social and emotional learning at home with our kids through listening to what our kids are saying, communicating in different ways, and modeling with our children. I hope you enjoy. Marcelle, hello. Thank you so much for being here.
I mean, I'm so privileged and excited to be here with you. So thank you.
Well, I'm excited because, we got a chance to talk before we hit the record button, and I'm excited to learn about you and share your work with my audience. So can you just take a minute and just share a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today?
Absolutely. So where do I even start? I was an elementary educator and a preschool educator. And so kind of to pop before that is, I grew up in a little small town, actually on an island in the Pacific Northwest, and grew up in a house with my mom and my brother. And, we grew up in an area that was a little bit in the higher socioeconomics, and we didn't really feel like we fit in very well in the area, but yet we were in really good schools, and we were, my mom thought that was a great place for us. And, I think as a child now, reflecting back, thinking about kind of the emotions and the, hardships that were behind that time in our life was really something that drove me to want to do what I'm doing today. And so after, going through high school and graduating and heading off to college in Arizona, I just knew that I wanted to get into education. I loved babysitting. I loved children. And I was the first person in my family to go off to college and graduate. And, that was a really exciting thing for all of us. And I came back, and in fact, I ended up getting a job at my old school district that I went to, which was really, surprising for me, given, kind of the struggles that we had in that, just being in that space. And what I really learned was, while I thought I was the only one, I really learned that, our children were all unique and had their own challenges and own, excitements in their own homes. And so I was a kindergarten teacher for 8.5 years. And then I went off to stay home to be a mom for a little while. And then when my son was 3 years old, I went and taught preschool. So I kind of went the other way, which was really cool, because I was like, I know where these children are going. And knowing what, was the expectations kind of socially, emotionally, and academically for kindergartners. So I was able to teach my son. I was directing and leading at the preschool for a couple of years. And then when he headed into kindergarten, it was time for me to kind of hunker down at home and be home with my kids, do some substituting. And that's where I just dreamed up, FeelLinks, which is, my business now. So that's a little bit of kind of background on, where I came from and why I ended up with this huge passion for social emotional learning for kids.
Isn't it so funny that you ended up back where you were formed, basically? It's so
surprising. I know it was to me. It really was. Let me tell you this though. When my mom sent me off to Arizona, there was sign this contract, you better come back. So I happened to meet my husband there, who's from Arizona. So that was even more of you said you were coming back. So came back, and immediately that's where I just landed. So it ended up being a really special kind of very full circle thing for me to then bring my own children back there, and just recognizing life very differently there than I remembered it as a child.
Yeah. And knowing more things about the kids that are there and kids that and the experiences of the families versus what you saw or what
Yes.
you knew when you were
Right.
growing up. So
Yes.
fascinating.
Yes.
And for those people who may not know about FeelLinks, can you just give us a brief summary of what it is? Because I love
Yeah.
them, and you can show them too.
Okay. So FeelLinks is really like it's my small business that I created, and it really is a whole lot of things centered around, social emotional connections and understanding for children. But mostly it started with my idea of this product and resource for children. And so I created these little feeling dolls, and these dolls they are each double-sided. So there's 4 dolls. So we have a total of 8 core feelings. And the dolls are super squishable. They each have their own color, facial expressions for the 8 feelings, and then they each have these great little you talk a lot about like body mapping and where our feelings are and what happens, and that's really kind of the same idea of these head, heart, and belly symbols on each doll, so that we can think about like when things are happening to our bodies, what emotions are coming. So that was kind of, the purpose behind using those touch points, I call them. And so there's 8 dolls. And then there is a journal that actually pairs with the idea of using the dolls for, we could use the dolls for communicating, um, lots of play to learn activities to do with them. And also, the journal helps kids to really understand that while we might be using the happy doll or talking about feeling happy, each of these have words to grow on in the journal. So, talking about using more like, specific vocabulary about our feelings. So, inside the journal, there are a ton of fun pages all around our emotions and our feelings and gratitude and, different kinds of weather and how we feel about them, but talking about how our emotions are like that, how our, emotions kind of go in and out, just like the weather changes. And then I have, these daily journal pages, and the daily journal pages are really all about, is it something that a child's going to do every day? Probably not, but we're trying to set up healthy habits. And so using the journal for expressing things that might be tough, expressing things that are wonderful, or being able to communicate to a teacher or a parent that maybe you're not ready to speak about something. And so the journal is very repetitive in terms of the daily pages. And I really felt as a teacher, knowing that routine and predictability helps children not feel like that stress and worry about how to do something. And so once a child can understand how to go through and use that daily page, I really wanted it to be something they could pick up on their own. So that's really, what FeelLinks resources are, along with, I've got some other, blog writing and other things that are all centered around emotions.
Oh my gosh, this is so up my alley because thinking about the podcast I've recorded kind of recently, all about where do you feel things in your body.
Yep.
It's just that work is so key in order to be able to cope, like to be able to recognize what you feel is
Yes.
huge. And, as Dan Siegel, Tina Payne Bryson, once you name it, you can
Yes.
tame it. And that
Yes.
makes such a huge difference for kids. So I love that this can start. This is like 4 to 8 years old. This is there, you can
Yes.
start pretty little with them. I would love you're really focused on social and emotional learning, which is huge. And especially given what we've been all living with in terms of COVID and the stress of that. And just in general, even before COVID, there was a lot of stress, anxiety, anger that was happening, and really wanting to focus on that social and emotional learning. So I mean, I talk about the benefits of social and emotional learning, but from
Sure.
what you've seen as an educator, what are the benefits that you notice about social and emotional learning?
So, I honestly go to kind of those like 4 key components because I think, which is, more from like Daniel Goleman, but it really comes to me from this perspective of like, what is the whole person? Like, what are we looking for in our children and even in ourselves, to be the best that we can. And so to me, that comes into that whole self-awareness. So like recognizing our own emotions, recognizing where, we can grow and learn as human beings, right? Like being listeners and just understanding ourselves more. And then that whole idea of, self-managing. So how do we, regulate our emotions? And as, the adult in a child's life, like hopefully, there's something called that co-regulation that we start out with our kids. I mean, even as infants, when our newborns are there, we're helping soothe and we're being that safe place for them. But eventually what we really want for our kids is to be able to do that on their own. So regulating those emotions, being able to know how to respond rather than quickly react to things. So thinking first. So those are all, important things from, any age that we can start teaching our children. And then, understanding other people. So when we have that self-awareness, what we are also gaining in that is some like social awareness. So being able to have, empathy and care, understand someone's tone, someone's face, someone's, what are they sharing with you in saying like, not right now. And we want our kids to understand what that means when someone might not want them talking to them or next to them, or they're having, a rough moment. It's time to step away. So being able to read other people in a social setting, and then really just like building relationships. We are human beings who have an absolute need for, others in our lives, like, loneliness can be like a really hard and very tough emotion to feel. So if we have these skills, then we're better able to build relationships with other people. And whether that's family relationships, friend relationships, or later on in life, coworker relationships, we are building these skills in our children so that as human beings, we can create, I always say like kinder, more compassionate and inclusive world. Like that to me, like I put that in every newsletter. That to me is what we are trying to create. Like we want kids to have these skills to grow as adults that are going to go off and do their thing, right?
Yeah.
And these are just the skills and they're hard and we are adults and we are working on them, right? But the more that we can instill in our children the importance of feeling the feelings, being who we are, letting other people hear us, listening to others, like these are all such important things and things that I, did with my preschoolers and kindergartners and my own children.
Yes, absolutely. I love what you said. Say it again. Be a kinder,
more compassionate and inclusive world. Like I just, yeah, like those are my, like, those are just my heart. So.
right. And, it's so funny because like, that's basically what I think about when I think about coping skills. Like I want people to be able to manage themselves so they can be into interaction with other people and they can understand where other people are coming from, have good conversations, even if you don't agree, and learn how to live together with one another. It's really challenging. And I
It
mean,
is.
it's really challenging.
Well, and so my children right now are 9 and 11. And so my daughter just started middle school and she just participated in her first debate at school. And they were given, a topic and they had to, kind of go back and forth. And like, what a great skill. They're learning how to listen. They're learning how to, speak to their point. They're learning how to listen back. So they're learning how to do that. And if we can continue teaching that and working on that in our homes and, like, it just reminded me of like, we have to be doing those things at home too. We cannot expect that those things are only happening at school and social emotional learning is for school. Social emotional learning is for our homes, our communities, our schools, and we need to be really, working hard on that in our homes and not expect that there's some expectation that, oh, you have social emotional learning at school and a curriculum, so that's where it happens. So please hear me if you don't. Like, it's at home too.
Yes. And yes, I've gotten that a few times where people are like, well, you can just do it at school. And I'm like, well, how much can you put on the teachers, first of all?
Yeah,
And second of all, like, yes, there's a part of that school is a natural learning place because you have a group of students, you have peers, you have an adult in charge, you're going to be learning social skills, you're going to be learning how to interact with others naturally in a school environment just because of the environment. But
right.
what do you want your kids to walk in as when they are like walking into the building? What are your
Right.
goals? What are your ethics? What are your morals? And do they know that? And you've got to start at home
Right.
talking about feelings, talking about emotions. It's so
Yeah.
interesting. So how
Yeah.
would you say, if parents want to start this, if parents are thinking, okay, I'm on board. I like what they're saying. I'm totally wanting to start doing some SEL, some social emotional
Right.
learning at home. Where
Mhm.
should they start?
So for, so my big things are, first of all, like listen to your kids, because I feel like our kids are such great teachers for us because they're telling us things. And sometimes they're telling us things with their behavior, but sometimes they're communicating it to us and we really need to listen. And whether we agree or we don't agree is neither here nor there. We need to listen to our kids and hear what they're saying and validate to them that you hear them. And part of that also is just our own modeling. So I've said this before, but sometimes I overuse the word frustrated. But my kids know when I say, like, I feel really frustrated right now because, and I'll say why. I'm a big why. I'm not just a like, I'm frustrated and see you later. It's like, I feel really frustrated because this is happening or because of this. And my children know what that means. That means like, I need to step away. That is what I need to do. And then we can start back again. Or maybe now you are going to move on the thing that I have, let you know I felt frustrated on. I mean, we're big on contributing to our home. Like we need to do that together. And so when I hear I don't want to do the dishwasher, it's like, it's okay for you to let me know that in a nicer tone, and you can tell me that you don't like it. And you can tell me that, you feel frustrated that you have to do it. But how are you speaking to me and how are we going to do that? Because we just did the same thing 3 days ago, So really modeling to our kids, like when I say I'm frustrated, what do I need to do? Modeling being able to know when our feelings are approaching, letting them hear us speak out loud, even from babies. I mean, I talked to my kids when they were babies all the time. And so just, oh, mom feels so excited because we're going to go out and we're going to run to the park today, just using the words all of those pieces, I think, are just so important for us to show our children that we are in tune with our own emotions. We are showing that self-awareness and we are projecting that to our children, because what we're hoping, hopefully, is that your kids are going to understand as you said, like your family values. What are the things that are important to you as your family, and helping your children carry that through their daily lives in your home and outside.
And I love the example of the dishwasher. Let me tell you why. Because that is so realistic. Because I think sometimes parents will feel like, well, if I'm going to start talking about social and emotional stuff and we're going to be like kind of like touchy feely, like we're going to be like talking about our emotions, things are going to be great. No, they're not. They're still not going to
Right.
want to unload the dishwasher, and you're still
Right.
going to have some frustrating conversations around that.
Yeah.
Like that.
And you're still going to do it. Like,
Right.
I'm not going to come in and fix the issue by doing
Right.
it for you. Like, you're 9 and 11 and we've been doing this since you were 3. We've been practicing what it feels like to put the dishes away, So yes, I think that's the other big piece, I think, too, of that social emotional learning at home, is not like swooping in to fix it and make it right so that we could just quickly move on, right? I mean, we want to move on eventually,
Yes.
but we need to listen to it and we need to let them work through that and talk about those coping skills to get to where we need to go, so that then we can move on to whatever the next thing is, because we want our children to learn those things so that they move on to adulthood being able to do that.
Right.
Can't go to
Exactly.
work and be mad at everybody all day long and then
Right.
expect that, good things are going to happen that day.
Well, and being if you're all living in the house, I have a 14 and an 11-year-old, so I understand. I like it sometimes. When we've been talking, it's like you're in my house, like you've seen my disaster sometimes. And that's the thing. Like, you want to be able to teach them not only like the social and emotional stuff, but also like just how it is to be in relationship with somebody that you live with. Like when you leave the dishes in the sink versus putting them in the dishwasher, that's extremely frustrating for somebody
Yes.
who has to then come along and put them in the dishwasher. Whereas we
Yes.
knew the dishwasher was dirty, and so let's put them in there. And that is a perfect teachable moment to say, I'm feeling frustrated.
Yes.
And
Yes.
like being able to model that for kids. And it's this delicate balance of like, you don't want to feel like you are like crushing them, but you
Right.
also want them to understand your behavior impacts me and my
Yeah.
emotions and like what I am actually able to do and accomplish with my day as well. Let's work
Exactly.
together and let's figure out this problem together. We are a family. We work together, we figure it out. And these are your responsibilities. These are my responsibilities. How can we make this better?
Yes. And I love that because I think, the more that we can have those communications and those conversations, even when things are calm. So going back to it even, and not, going back to it and spending a lot of time, but saying, earlier today when that happened, it didn't make me feel very good and it didn't seem to make you feel very good. So the next time that comes up, let's talk about what we're going to do, because I do expect that you have some responsibilities in our home, and this is one of them that we agreed upon, or whatever it is. But I think that we don't want to, continue to harp on things, but I think it's safe to go back to things and have those conversations at a different time so that the next time it comes up, we have a plan or we have an action that's going to happen differently.
Yes.
So I think that's really important, especially with our older, kids, as we're talking about now. But even with the littles, I mean, when they are super excited or overly, feeling stressed or whatever the feeling is, if it's too high and they're all in their emotions, don't try and have a logical conversation. That is not the time to do it.
Yep.
Right. So once we can come back to we can cope through that, we could come back to a better place where we're feeling a little bit calmer, then we can have that discussion. But we're not going to try and have that when we're, it could be overexcitement or it could be super furious. I mean, there's, both ends of the spectrum there. So
yeah. And that I think that's perfect to be able to help reiterate that you don't have to, a teachable moment doesn't have to happen right there. Especially when things are escalated, that's not when optimal teaching is going to happen. They're not hearing you. You're not able, maybe you're getting frustrated and you're getting more escalated, and then everybody needs to take a break, and that is cool. But then to be able to revisit it when things have calmed down, and to just it's okay to apologize if things didn't go well, because nobody is perfect. And it is okay to then have the conversation about how can we make this better? What's our plan for the next time? I love that you said that. Make a plan for the next time. Is it going to be beautiful? No. Will they do it all the time? No.
Right.
Because do you do all your chores every day? No.
No.
So
yes. Well, and I think too, going back to the idea of the journal, that's such a great place to, or a place for kids to be able to, express that. At the end of my day, sometimes it's the conversation with my kids in bed, but sometimes my daughter is a journaler, that's her favorite. So she'll even write things to me in a journal and pass it. And then we pass things back and forth. And that is another way for us to communicate. And sometimes for our kiddos, or even ourselves as adults, just getting it down on paper or drawing a picture, to get it out. That is such a great practice too, to be able to just be expressive in our way that might not be actually talking to someone.
yes. Oh my gosh, journaling is so powerful. I love when people can use journaling, and I think it's so sweet that the two of you have done that back and forth. It's so funny because my daughter and I have done that as well, where she writes to me, I write back to her, and she'll leave it under my pillow and I'll leave it under hers.
I know. Yes, I know.
Really
I
cute.
love it. Well, and I love too, because given their ages, I think that, sometimes they want to approach something, but they're not really sure how, and they want to talk to you about something like that's very personal or something, that they're not really sure how to approach it. And so sometimes just writing it down, like in a note or in a journal, and just having communication. It's like, sometimes it'll say like, I don't want to talk about this. I just want you to write me back. It's like, okay. So, but what a great way. And, it's teachable for both of us, and we're both learning something new. So it's good. It's a good practice.
And it's keeping the lines of communication open in whatever way will be most comfortable, because that's really what it comes down to. We want to talk about the little things so they'll talk with us about the big things.
Oh yeah.
That
Yeah.
is the hope, and that's the goal. We want them to be able to feel comfortable enough. Yes, talk to me about video games. Oh my goodness,
Right.
let's hear more about Minecraft.
Yes.
But then you
Yes.
can also tell me if somebody is bothering you at school, or if something is
Absolutely.
happening where it's not like it made you feel uncomfortable and this is why, or you're confused about this, or you're hearing these words that are scary. Like, let's have a bigger conversation. I love that. Oh my goodness.
Well, and just takes me back to when I was teaching kindergarten. We did an A to Z feeling book, and so the kids would. So in my journal, I kind of have that same idea, like tell a time that you felt a certain feeling, and so they can draw or write in there. But so we did that, and the kids started the year with dictation, and I would come up and type everything out, and then eventually some of them were writing their own words or whatever with their pictures. And I still today hear, from parents that tell me, I mean, I have kids that are graduated high school and all that, but my students that are graduated high school, and they tell me like, it is such an amazing keepsake. And that the stories their children told and what they said they were feeling, and like, half of them might not have been totally exactly right or true. And so the parents would tease me that I knew more about what was going on behind their doors than anybody else in their world. But it was such a special way for kids to be able to learn those feeling words a little bit deeper, express things that might be happening or out of their own lens. So you have to remember too, like your kid's lens is their lens, right? And it might not look the same to you, but that's their lens as a 5-year-old, a 7-year-old, or even a 15-year-old. That's what they are feeling. That's what they're seeing. And those are the things that we need to also just tune in and listen to, and come to our kids, patiently. And sometimes they don't want to talk, right? So that's the other thing, is like using those ideas of writing or using other, ways of communicating with each other is also important.
Yeah, I love that. Oh my gosh, I could talk to you all day.
I know.
I'm going to be honoring of your time, and I want to make sure. Just one last question before I wrap up. I ask all my guests this. How do
Yeah.
you like to rest and recharge?
Boy, so I would say as a mom and a entrepreneur, and I'm an avid volunteer, I'm that person that has so many things that it's hard for me to take my own advice sometimes to do that. But there are days where I'm like, I have to do these things. And so I was a dancer, and I take a class called Bar 3, and it is my mind, body, and soul. Like it gives me peace to do it. And I love the people, all the different, unique bodies and women and men that come in, and we do class, and it's just really special. Um, the other thing that I really like to do is turn music on and jam in the kitchen. Like that is my favorite. I did it yesterday because I was just like, I need to do this now. So I turned on some tunes. I am a big Stevie Wonder fan. And so I turned on, that was our wedding song was You Are the Sunshine of My Life.
Oh.
But turn on Stevie Wonder and just like rocked it out while I was making dinner. And that to me just brings me like super joy, and just helps me like recharge and refuel my energy for my family, my job, my, everything. So those are, I would say, yeah, taking my bar class is my thing. And just, I love music. I really do. And it takes me back to some really great things in my childhood. So that's also feels good.
Oh, music and movement. That's who you are. And oh my, bar is hard. I've done
It
bar
is
class.
hard.
It's like,
I
you
know.
shake. And they're like, feel the shake. And I'm like, what?
And my legs are really shaking. Yeah, no, I love it. And it's an amazing community. And I love, like, sometimes they'll do like outdoor, well, we're in Seattle area, so it's not all that, but in the summer they'll do outdoor ones. And it's really cool. And the connection with the instructors and the women and men in class. And it's really special.
Oh,
So
that's amazing. I'm so glad that you have that and you've recognized that about yourself. And that's like you make it part of your life. And I am right there with you. Like it is a
yeah,
challenge, but like if I put it on my schedule, it gets done usually.
yes,
So, so I
yes,
actually like schedule it in. So I
exactly.
know that's how it has to happen. So I'm
Yeah.
so excited that you were able to come on the podcast. Where should people go if they want to follow you or find you?
Okay, so my handle on Instagram and Facebook are at my FeelLinks. So it's all one word, but feel is FEEL and then links LINKS. So there's two L's there. So it's at my feelings. And then my website is myfeelings.com. And I just have, my resources and blogs and some other information about some of the topics that we've talked about today. And yeah, so that's where you can find me.
Excellent. And I'll link to those in the show notes so people can just click right on over and get a chance to, dive a little bit deeper into your work and look at what you have to offer. And I think that's so great. Thank you so much for being on the Calm and Connected podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.